Hey guys, we are back again on the Main Street Randyland YouTube channel. Hooray! You lucky people, you. Another fun story from the wonderful world of Randy. And we're over here at Randyland right now. We're hiding in one of the hidden spots that's kind of the in-depth parts of Randyland that people really never get to see. But you, because I'm taking you on these little surprise visits into my world at Randyland. So we were over here, and the other day we were over in this area, and my filmologist here noticed something, and he was like, well, what is this? Because you really can't tell when you look at it from the back, and it's over here. And if you look at it from the back, you'll say, well, what is that? Is that a grandma's dining room table, or, you know, the thing she kept her china in, you know, because here's a door, it's like a cupboard, and you could open the door and, you know, keep her fine china in there or something like that. But no, that's not what it is. I know some of you guys know what it is, but it is my first jukebox from when I was a kid, and we had a jukebox at home. This is the back. I mean, they painted the back grayish silver and all that stuff. And oh, look at that. It's got an imprinted serial number. It's got some handwritten numbers, but it's stamped with number 40714. Now, I can't imagine that they actually made 40,714 or more of these things. So it probably has some sort of code. Maybe 40 stands for 1940. Could that be? Well, it could very well be. There's some sort of code involved because I'm sure they didn't make 40,000 or 50,000 of these machines. Oh, what's this hanging on the top? Oh, Frisbees, right? Frisbee? No, they're not Frisbees. Do you know what they are? Everybody should know what these hats are because it's a small world after all. It's a small world after all. Yes, these are small world hats. This one's got some foam stuffed into it. This one's kind of pushed down a little bit, but you know, we could be Randy's Small World Randy. These are kind of the original Small World hats. And interestingly enough, this one was not only used in It's a Small World, but to make it even more special, ELP, the Electrical Light Parade in the Small World unit, where they dressed in the costumes of It's a Small World, and the arch pushers would push their little wagon of lights with the Small World floats, and they would do their bell kicks in the middle of Main Street. They wore Small World hats. So this one was worn by one of the performers. We're getting on my tangent for my jukebox, but it is musical. You know, jukebox is a musical. We're singing, It's a Small World After All. Did you see my videos where I'm stuck on It's a Small World? It's on my YouTube channel. I guess he'll have to put a link. Link, 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 hint, hint, link, link. Now, everybody knows the word Wurlitzer. Famous for jukeboxes. And they had that famous round top jukebox. This is not a Wurlitzer. Okay? This is an AMI. Now, AMI was a big company. If I'm not mistaken, AMI either became Row or is Row or one of those deals. I don't know. I seem to remember it that way. I'm not big into jukebox, and I know there's you people out there who sit and you find these things on the computer and you get your pencil and you write them down and you study it so that you know who merged with who back in 1929 and the name of the grandkids and all these things. I mean, really, I mean, that's fine if you like to know that depth of history. To me, I just like the machines because I enjoyed playing with the machines, and I'm the little kid with the machines. So it really doesn't matter to me that much, but it is an AMI. Look at that beautiful door. Look at the condition of that. That really is nice. And I know you're wondering, this is plastic. Can you believe that? Back in the days, now, you're probably around World War II, where they were making plastics, and plastics were something new coming in back then. Do you remember It's a Wonderful Life? Right? And their friend who was into the plastics, hee-haw! The guy who made all the money, he made a fortune in selling plastics to the government. Hee-haw! But plastic back in those days was not as durable and as strong as plastic is today. It was a different process. And certainly today we have polycarbonates. Did you ever wonder why your soda bottle, your 2-liter bottle of soda, or your 20-ounce bottle of soda you typically get from vending machines, do you ever wonder why that clear plastic doesn't break like plexiglass? I mean, you've all had plexiglass, right? And you twist it a little bit and it cracks. Well, how come your soda bottle doesn't crack like that? You can squeeze it, you can twist it, and the things don't break. Because they manufactured a new product for that purpose called polycarbonate. And it's otherwise known as the brand name of Lexan, that you buy it in sheets, but it's a polycarbonate, and that's the better plastic they make today. You can still get plexiglass, which breaks, but polycarbonate costs twice as much. But they didn't have that back in those days, so they had to use whatever they made from soybean products and all these things with plastics. And I do have one little break here, unfortunately, that the plastic broke, and I kind of just taped it together. Now, could I take a piece of modern plastic and heat it up and bend it? Yes, I could, because this is a rather easy bend. This is an easy bend. It's just a flat piece that's bent on a curve. If this were to break on top, that would be a major, major problem, because I would not have the ability, the physical machinery in order to mold that. Hopefully, I'll never, ever, ever break one of those top plastics, but one of the sides did get cracked, and someday I will have to, if I ever live that long, get ingenuity and bend a new piece. Uh-oh, some of my buttons have come off. Now, this was one of this is one of the things that happened when I was a kid. You see this top button here? It's actually sticking out. If you see on the top of it, it's hard to see, zoom in. It's sticking out a little further than the ones around it. Because when I was a kid laying in my hammock down in the basement, all of a sudden I heard something go pop, and bouncing along the floor. We had a tile floor, and I was like, what was that? And I had to go searching for it. And this button had just popped off for no reason at all, because they're held on with glue. They're not anything special with a pin or anything. They're just glued on there. And eventually, I guess the glue wears off and they pop off. So this one here is sticking way out, and I could probably pull it off, but I'm not going to. A couple of them here have popped off, and this one's sticking out. So I would have to glue them back on again, but I have the pieces. Don't worry, not to worry, I have the pieces. This gave you one play for a nickel. A nickel, 5 cents, okay? You got a dime, got you 2 plays, and 25 cents got you 5 plays. So it took all 3 coins in one denomination. This is your coin return right here, where you could turn this if the coin gets stuck, and it would come back out, and your coin return down on the bottom. This machine has 10, 20, 30, 40. Only 40 selections. Today's world, nobody's satisfied with only 40 selections. And you know what 40 selections actually means? There's only 20 records in the machine, because each record has 2 sides. So this is the A side, this is the B side. So you really only could put in 20 records. Now you'd say to yourself, oh my God, only 20 records? That was a big deal, because when jukeboxes first came out, they had 10 records. And there were some small models made that had 6 records or 5 records that were little countertop jukeboxes, and, you know, evolution. But this was a 20 record machine. I mean, you know, you got into the 70s, everything was 100 selection because they held 50 records. Then you had 200 selection because they held 100 records. 20 records. So you had to be really selective on what you put in there in order to particularly, you know, like what you do. So this is how you open it up. And here's your coin mech, where your coins go down in. It's your standard triple mech, although it's a very older style of it. Here's your play counter. Only 13,017 plays. Trust me, that has turned over several times. You would change your title selections by pulling out these plastics and slipping in a new piece of paper with the title on it. They used to actually make title paper that would fit that model jukebox. But of course, they didn't have any when I was around, so I cut, you know, colored crepe paper from school and, you know, typed on it with a typewriter. And this here is your totalizer, which is actually counting the coin levels going in so that then you can use them, because first you put your coins in, it has to remember how many credits you have so that when you make your selections, it deducts from your credit. It's an electromechanical system, stepper type, with coils that will pull up, either pull the stepper 1 notch for a nickel, 2 notches for a dime, 5 notches for a quarter, and then it would go down by 1 for each selection that you're doing on a nickel. Okay? I'm not sure how you would modify that if you were doing dimes, but I guess you could work around it. I could anyway. So, inside the machine, we have one of the most important things of all. Over here on the side, most jukeboxes don't include one, but this one does. It is a tissue box. We had kitty cats. And the kitty cats used to come in and play with me, and I am allergic to cats, dogs, anything with fur. Horses are the worst. I mean, they have hair, but I mean, I am very, very, very allergic to horses, which was a problem when I worked on Main Street with the horse-drawn trolleys. So I had to stay away from them. But the tissue box was there because I was constantly in a state of sneezing and runny nose, playing with the cats and listening to my jukebox and playing pinball. So I would go over to the jukebox and open the door and get a tissue. So the tissue box is there. And by the way, you might not recognize this tissue box. This is a tissue box from the room at the Contemporary Resort Hotel. So you got to take home your tissue box because it was laying not in the dispenser if they gave you an extra tissue box, and who wants your used tissues after you had your germs in? So you take home your tissue box, and that is a Contemporary Resort Hotel tissue box from the 70s. So inside he goes, back where I know he is, and of course, I would never, ever, ever use one of those tissues ever again because they are now part of the Randy collection from the history of tissues from 50 years ago. Do you have tissue boxes from 50 years ago? Well, you should, because if you had the foresights and wherewithal to save your stuff, you too could be a collector of superior caliber such as I. Back to the jukebox. We actually only have 3 main motors. I almost said 2 because you can only see 2. Motor A, motor B. The other motor is hiding under the turntable, which actually will turn your record. Your carriage holds your records. This carriage, and I'm not going to turn it on for you. I know people say, why don't you turn it on? Because I haven't turned this on probably in 30 years. And I know that I would first grease all the bearings and the motors and make sure all things are moving free and easily before I attempted to do that. And this is a video as we're doing on the fly of stuff, so I'm not going to start greasing up the motors in order to make sure that they're not going to burn out. So this carriage here moves back and forth, in and out, to the claw arm. Think of it like a crane machine with a claw, but it's only 2 instead of 3. It's 2 that would pick up the record from the side out of the rack. So the carriage will move to the position where the claw, which is stationary, is right over that record that is part of the selection. It'll pick the record up, bring it over its head, and then turn it to lay it down onto the record platinum. Now, the machine has the ability of turning this way or turning that way for the A side or the B side of the record, because the machine knows what you selected, if it was on A side or B side, so it knows which column the record is in and which way to turn the record. And all this is done by properly putting your titles in your particular pressing spot. So when you press your selection button, each button will coordinate to a electromechanical coil that's underneath these stoppers. So here's one. Right now, because I must have been playing this jukebox, they're all actually in their up position because I would have selected everything, just let it play in order. But these are popped up, but in the down position, all right, when you push these down too. So this would be, bypass. So this carriage would come along and there's a switch right here. See this? It's actually stopped on that one, so it's release it. Okay. There's a switch here. See that? You hear it clicking? So as this carriage moves this way, it would hit one of these in the up position. My fat finger in the way. Can you see it now? I'll pop it up, because they were selected. So the switch will hit this piece of metal and stop the carriage. So this carriage now knows it's in the right position for that record. Then it would send the signal to the motor. The motor would start cranking. The claw would squeeze shut, pick up the record, move it over, drop it on the plate. And when everything was complete with the record, it would pop down that selection because it was now used and played. Remember I told you those buttons fell off? They must be around. Look, there they are. Buttons. And the spring that goes on the button, and there's a piece of metal that slides in there that you have to glue some glue on. See, I told you I had the buttons. Why are these records blue? Can you see the pretty blue? That is not original. This machine, as I was explaining, was made back way when, and records were the size of 78s. The big old Victrola that you cranked up, and then you put the breakable records on it. If you dropped them, they broke, and it would play. Well, that's the size of a 78, but it's got a 45. So these rings were later manufactured as a retrofit for jukeboxes that used old 78s because the claw is the size to pick up a 78. So you can't play 45s because it couldn't pick up that small record. So you put them inside this plastic ring and they snap in there just nicely. And a lot of times you'll break the record putting it in there because you try to get it in there and you'll snap the record. But it works nicely once they're in. Now, if you also know anything about records, and a lot of people are like, records? Who's ever seen a record? They don't even know what CDs are anymore. Heaven forbid. 78s used to have the little tiny hole in the middle. They didn't have the big hole. The big hole was for 45s. So how does it put it down on that turntable? I mean, well, look at this. The center of the turntable is the size of a 45 record hole. But it wasn't always. That is the original way that machine is, with the single point that would find the hole and go through the middle of the record. So this was an adapter that was put on when you switched your machine to using 45s. I have put brand new records in this machine back in the day where that hole was not perfect, and this piece here got wedged in there. So when it would pick the record back up again to put it back into the rack, it's not thin anymore. It's got this piece in the middle, and it would jam down into the separators on the rack, and you'd find your record sitting here like this. Couldn't go down. The motor's jammed, and now your jukebox is out of order, all because it took the adapter with it. How do you play a 45 on a jukebox that was made for 78s? You have to change the speed on your turntable. You know, back in the day, turntables were adjustable because they allowed you to do that, but not on jukeboxes that were made for 78. So underneath the turntable, if you can see, you have your motor, and the motor, which you're not going to be able to see, has a roller that rolls on the side of the turntable on the inside. So I can't tell you because I got this, you know, obviously pre-converted. Either the motor was changed so that the speeds and the RPMs was equivalent for what a 45 needs, or they changed the roller on the top of it, which then made it turn the turntable at a different speed. So obviously this was completely converted to run for 45s instead of 78s. I used to think one time it would be interesting to turn the machine back into 78s. But as much as that would be more historic for the machine, this is my world, the wonderful world of Randy. So in my world, I only knew this as 45s because that's what it played for me. That's the way I got it. So I would never change it back to 78s unless it was just temporary, because I enjoy it this way, and it still has the records that I played when I was a kid. What records were those, Randy? The Entertainer, Honestly I Love You, Please Mr. Postman, The Night Chicago Died, It's Too Late, Rock Around the Clock, The Streak, Mr. President, Band on the Run, Sundown, Sideshow, The Night the Lights Went Out in Georgia, We Can Work It Out, I Want to Hold Your Hand, Delta Dawn, what's that flower you have on? Could it be a faded rose from days gone by? My Melody of Love, Brotherly Love, At the Hop, Billy, don't be a hero, don't be a fool with your life. All I need is the air that I breathe. Now, these would be the equivalents. So the opposite side of number 1 is actually number 40. Opposite ends. So then this back would be this one. They go backwards. They go backwards. You know why? Because the carriage was going one direction, and then it turns around going the other direction. Not that the motor reverse, but it gets to the end of the line and it goes back the other way. So by going the other way, it's going to hit the last record first, first record last. That's why. So entertainer opposite is Solas. I Honestly Love You. What's on the other side of that? Home Ain't Home Anymore. Now, I don't even know most of these B-sides. Let's look from the top up. It's Too Late Playing, 1985, popularity. You've Got Music Inside. 13 Women. Now, that was one I actually played. Do you remember 13 Women? There's 13 women and only one man in town. Yes, 13 women and only one man around. And it goes on telling you how, this poor guy, he's in town and he's the only man and there's 13 women. Of course, they didn't tell you that they were all hags and 50,000 years old from mummified, but 13 women and only one man in town. Let's see, I feel the earth move under my feet. I feel the earth move under my feet. I feel the sky tumbling down, tumbling down. Okay, wait. Can you get it when you want it? Talk about suggestive stuff. Can you get it when you want it? When you want it, can you put your finger on it? I mean, really, these are the actual lyrics here. And they're talking about birthday cake. Can you get it when you want it? Can you put your finger on it? It's birthday cake. What did you think it was? Home Ain't Home Anymore. We did the Solas. Okay. Stop to Stop, whatever that is. Dime a Dance. Hey, mister, take a chance. It only costs you a dime a dance. And if you're looking for romance, I'll be nice to you. All right, Day Tripper. That was the Beatles. I Saw Her Standing There. Beatles, so those are good ones. Peaceful, I don't remember. I'll Be Loving You. If You Love Me. Rock and roll is here to stay. It will never die. Deeper and Deeper, and No More Riders. Where do you get records for a jukebox? At that time, the big place for records was Sam Goody's in the mall. Yes, you went to the mall, to the music store, and they had a whole wall full of cubicles with records, and they would have the top records that were the hits of the day, and you would buy records, and they were cheap. At that time, it was like 68 cents, 99 cents for a 45. So I would go to Sam Goody's, and, I would be like, pick, try to get one of everything, and then play them and see what you liked. So I have way more than 20 records, someplace in the Randy archives or, boxes of 45s that I played, and sometimes I did switch them out. But these records were finally selected to be in the jukebox because their B-side was tolerable. Make sense? Since you only had 20 records and you had, the B-side was the other half of your jukebox, so making it 40. If the B-side was so horrible that you didn't ever want to play it, that wasn't a good selection for the jukebox. So most of the B-sides, not all of them, but if you remember, I was able to remember some of those B-sides, were decent. Not that they were, number one hits, but the B-side is a B-side for a reason, because it's a B song, not an A song. Now, the Beatles records usually had a Beatles song on the other side through those Apple, remember Apple label? So they were actually pretty good. But not all of them were, and that's why the selection was made, and accordingly so. My sister used to influence what I would, buy, because she knew songs better than I did. But I mean, if I didn't like the song, I was like, I don't like that song. Put it in. So I was the one who was always working on it. So eventually I got to put the records in the jukebox. See, so when you're the one who supplies it, you get to pick. Just like my soda machine, you'll find that most flavors are flavors I like because I'm the one who loads the soda machine. This machine was only the second machine in the Randy collection. The first one was my Alpine Club pinball. Then came the jukebox. This is one of those odd things that I never saw before I got it. I never played it anywhere, and it just kind of ended up in my collection. Well, how does such a thing happen? It goes back to the story of my first pinball. My sister wanted a pinball like mine because I had gotten that for my combination Christmas birthday present, and even though we all played it, she felt I was hogging it. She wanted one. She wanted one that was going to be as good with as many features, and she searched and searched and searched. And among our searching, it took us to a distributor, small distributor, that would put machines out in locations in, I believe he was actually physically Springfield, New Jersey, on Route 22. He was Route 22 south, just south of Echo Lanes Bowling, which was near Bowcraft. Now, those people who are from that area, you know exactly where I'm talking about. I'm sure the building is long gone. It was kind of set back. It was called Wingate Enterprises. So you're not going to be able to get out your directory and find Wingate Enterprises. They're long since out of business. But they were a local distributor that would buy machines, and they would put them out into, at that time, F.W. Woolworths Company stores had some machines. They had them in Madison, up near Plaza Lanes, and Plaza Lanes had machines, the bowling alley in Madison, and they were there, placed by Wingate Enterprises. That's where we got the name. Their little sticker was on the machine when we went bowling, because we lived in Short Hills. We were in that area. So we had called all kinds of places trying to find pinball machines for my sister. And when we were there, we saw they had some other stuff in their back warehouse, and they had the AMI jukebox sitting there. And I took a liking to it, but, we were there for my sister, and I wasn't necessarily looking to do it. So my parents went back and bought it as a surprise for birthday time that was coming up for me, and it was a birthday gift. Back then, and of course money was different, how much did that cost? It only cost $75. Now, money is different. $75 back then is probably $675 today, but it was reasonable for people who were looking to buy a machine at the time, and they delivered it to our house in Short Hills. I'm not sure if there was a fee for delivery or not, but we bought a few machines from Wingate over the years. My Wild Cycle machine from Allied Leisure that spent its time with me in my bedroom in Short Hills, that was from Wingate Enterprises, and that was an odd thing also. I was trying to buy a Speedway, but although they had some Speedways, they were making a lot of money on the locations, and they wouldn't sell me a Speedway. But they had a Wild Cycle, which was similar. It was a motorcycle on a projected track. So they talked me into the Wild Cycle, and I ended up getting the Wild Cycle. But I ended up getting a Speedway also later on, But it was Wild Cycle. It came from Wingate, as did the jukebox. And there you have it, the story of acquisitions. So the AMI jukebox, another story from the Main Street Randyland YouTube channel. Wasn't that fun? I always have such good stories because I have good stuff. And I live this stuff. Now you should be living your stuff too, and then someday you can make videos and have your very own YouTube channel too. Did you subscribe? You better tell your friends, because that's how we bring you more good stories about stuff. Bye. We'll see you next time.